During Salazar's dictatorship in Portugal in 1942, a policeman named Jasmine informs Chief Inspector Vargas about two French citizens who have been detained for not possessing visas in their passports. Intrigued by Laura's beauty, Vargas instructs his subordinate to have their female colleague search her when he sees her in the holding cell. Later, when Jasmine visits Laura's brother, Boris, it's revealed that he is a French refugee. Since the inspector cannot understand French, he asks Boris to empty his pockets. Complying, Boris shows several items, including a pack of cigarettes. While joking with him about smoking tobacco meant for women, Vargas tries one. When Boris laughs, the officer coldly tells him he'll soon be crying. Meanwhile, Vargas rummages through Laura's luggage and finds a lighter, lipstick, and compact powder. Curious, he opens the powder case and smears the bright red lipstick onto his skin. As Madalena, following Jasmine's orders, searches Laura, she finds nothing. Vargas then intervenes and tells Madalena to stop. In the next room, Boris lies about carrying insulin for diabetes when explaining his belongings. Despite this, the officer confiscates his items, suspecting him of using illegal drugs. Laura is then brought to Vargas's office for further questioning. Since no explosives were found on her, she doesn't seem to be a threat. She admits that they purchased fake passports in Casablanca. Vargas tells her this is a criminal offense and that they might be sent back to France. Although he suspects them of espionage, Laura insists she and her brother are refugees and that the names on the passports are genuine. The inspector remains skeptical and says the documents will be further examined. Alarmed, Laura tries to seduce Vargas with offers of money and her body in exchange for their safety. Madalena later escorts her back to the holding room where Boris is waiting. Laura, unaware that Vargas had taken her lipstick, continues searching for it. Jasmine informs his superior that Boris is in possession of morphine. When he asks what should be done with the refugees, Vargas replies that he will take care of it. At a hotel, Vargas's daughter Ilda reads a newspaper article aloud to her ill and unresponsive mother, Marta. The girl suspects her father is hiding something and, after finishing the article, lies beside her mother, wondering why her father has similar items in his study. When Vargas arrives home, Ilda quickly hurries downstairs to return the newspaper to the cabinet. While doing so, she discovers a photo of another woman and wonders why her father has it. She hears footsteps and quickly hides the photo, locking the cabinet. Ilda then heads to the kitchen, where the housekeeper, Deolinda, is preparing dinner. When asked, Deolinda says she doesn't know where Vargas is. She also tells Ilda it's forbidden to search the annex for him. As Ilda tries to go outside, Vargas appears and blocks her from entering the room. She follows him into the house and tells him that Marta recognized her earlier. Vargas is stunned when Ilda reveals that she read the newspaper to her mother after school. She also talks about her school day and says she recited a French poem in class. Ilda, excited, begins reciting it again on the stairs, but Vargas, thinking it's too mature for her, becomes concerned and says he'll speak to the school nuns. Ilda pleads with him not to. That evening, while Vargas serves dinner to Marta, Ilda mentions that her mother's doctor noted signs of improvement. Later, Ilda observes her father walking to the annex and, suspicious, searches his coat. She finds a woman's lipstick. Unbeknownst to her, Vargas has brought Laura home, and she is staying in a room in the annex. After sharing an intimate moment, Vargas and Laura speak about their personal experiences during the war. Vargas recounts being buried among corpses after a mortar strike decimated his unit, which left him with a scar. To survive, he later became a policeman. Laura explains that her family was vacationing in Midi when the war began, so they stayed there. Vargas promises that she and Boris will soon receive visas to travel to England. As Vargas leaves, Boris, who had been hiding in the closet, emerges, laughs at the inspector's war story, and gives his sister a back massage. Meanwhile, Ilda tells Deolinda a Bible story about Lot's older daughter convincing her younger sister to sleep with their father to preserve the family line. Disgusted, Deolinda assumes Ilda is making it up. Ilda insists it's written in scripture and continues the story, saying the daughters became pregnant and gave birth to Moab and Ben-Ami, the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites. Later that evening, Ilda reveals her hidden obsession with her father by undressing and sleeping in his bed. The next morning, when Deolinda finds the teenager there, she scolds her for staying in her father's bed and skipping school. After returning home from school the following day, Ilda visits her mother and places a flower behind her ear. Marta taps the flower gently, indicating she is making progress, as her daughter leaves to fetch the newspaper. Meanwhile, Ilda witnesses a private moment between Deolinda and Jasmine. She then overhears the inspector asking the housekeeper if Vargas has recently brought any French people to the house. The maid clarifies that since Marta fell ill, they haven't had any visitors. Fearing that Vargas would fire her if he found out about her relationship with Jasmine, she begs him to leave. Ilda runs downstairs to see her father, then goes to her mother's room and turns on the radio for her. That evening, Ilda asks Deolinda if she likes Jasmine and confronts her about being with him. Deolinda admits that the inspector isn't the marrying type. Ilda then asks whether the maid is also allowed to sleep with Vargas. The question offends Deolinda, and she asks Ilda to leave the room. That night, Vargas enters his daughter's room and tells her to go to bed early and finish her book the next day. When she asks for a kiss, she pulls his head closer as he leans in, but he breaks free and tells her she's too old for that kind of request. Upset, she goes to sleep. The next morning, Ilda enters the kitchen, and Deolinda urges her to hurry since she's already late for school. That evening, as Ilda looks out the window, she sees the maid returning from the annex. She confronts Deolinda about feeding a French woman, but the maid claims she was just cleaning the basement. When Ilda demands the key and blocks her path, Deolinda pleads with her, fearing Vargas might send her to an African prison camp if he learns the truth. Ilda takes the key anyway. However, Ilda changes her mind when Deolinda confesses that Vargas is also in the annex. Curious, Ilda asks where the room is, but the maid hesitates to reveal it. The girl then threatens to tell her father that the maid gave her the key if she refuses to talk. Horrified, Deolinda finally reveals that the French woman is staying in the last room beside the closet. That night, Ilda uses the key to enter the room and finds Laura asleep. Hearing someone approaching, she hides in the closet. She sees Boris wake Laura and ask for the morphine he had requested from Vargas. Listening in on their conversation, Ilda learns that Vargas gave Laura the hotel keys. Laura tells her brother they are free to leave whenever they want, but instead of feeling relieved, Boris becomes anxious. He fears they'll be deported to Poland if caught. Laura accuses him of wanting to stay because he's getting free morphine. Offended, Boris says nothing, and Laura apologizes, saying she's tired of being confined. The following morning, Ilda wakes up on the floor and quietly sneaks out of the room. She returns to the hotel, takes Laura's photo, and lies next to her mother in bed, telling her that Vargas is involved with the French woman, who seems to be around Ilda's age. She pleads with her mother to recover quickly. Suddenly, Deolinda enters and scolds Ilda for skipping class again. She warns that Vargas would be furious if he found out, but Ilda simply tells the maid to stay out of her private life. Later, Ilda goes to her father's study to return Laura's picture to the cabinet. While doing so, she finds a new passport with a false name and also discovers Vargas's resignation letter from the police. Connecting the dots, Ilda assumes her father is planning to abandon their family for the French woman. Immediately, she goes to the annex and finds sketches of human figures. Boris interrupts her and asks who she is. Instead of answering, the girl asks if he drew the images. He confirms it. Ilda tells him she doesn't like them and asks whether they were based on real people. Boris explains that they are purely from his imagination. Soon after, Laura arrives, and Ilda explains that she is Vargas's daughter and not a spy. She tells them her father doesn't know she's there and begs them not to mention her visit. When Laura asks what she wants, Ilda tells them they must leave. She fabricates a story, claiming Vargas will harm them, hoping to frighten them into leaving. Laura doesn't believe her, certain that the inspector wouldn't hurt them. She offers to translate a newspaper article to prove it. Intrigued, Laura invites Ilda to read in her room instead of Boris's. The girl reads aloud about a prisoner who lost her hair and sight while detained in a camp. Laura picks up the newspaper out of curiosity and realizes it's a communist publication. When she asks Ilda if she's a communist, the teenager replies that she isn't, but adds that she wants to protect them from Vargas, who might send them to a detention camp in Africa known as Tarrafal. When Laura insists that they're not communists, Ilda explains that the camp doesn't only hold communists. Realizing it's already late and Vargas might be arriving soon, Ilda says she needs to return to the hotel before finishing her thought. As she exits, she asks the siblings whether they plan to leave. Laura replies that they won't be leaving right away. When Boris chuckles and Laura becomes uneasy, Ilda starts to suspect they're trying to manipulate her father. Curious, Laura asks why Ilda is questioning them. The girl reveals that she found her father's fake passport and resignation letter. Since Vargas hadn't told the refugees about this, they are stunned. Laura tries to convince herself that the forged passport means nothing, but Ilda warns her not to become too attached to her father. As Ilda departs, Boris becomes worried for their safety, fearing they escaped France only to end up in a camp. Laura insists she didn't know about Vargas's forged documents. Boris asks what they'll do if the inspector decides to flee with them, but she cannot give him a clear answer. Meanwhile, Jasmine surprises Deolinda by waiting for her in the kitchen. He demands that she reveal the location of the French refugees, suspecting that Vargas is hiding something. Before he can push further, Vargas appears and asks why he's there. The officer says he wants to speak with him privately, so Vargas leads him into his office. Once inside, Jasmine accuses Vargas of hiding the refugees somewhere in the hotel, claiming that both they and their documents have mysteriously vanished. He makes it clear he doesn't care about what Vargas has done. He just wants his share of the bribe money. Vargas, however, remains silent and makes no confessions. Jasmine responds by threatening to destroy his career. He admits that, suspecting the siblings from the start, he had a colleague take photographs of their documents and fake passports. As he leaves, he gives Vargas 3 days to hand over his portion. Unbeknownst to them, Ilda overhears their entire conversation. Troubled, she later rests beside Deolinda, who holds her gently. The following day, Ilda cries out for help when she discovers that Marta is no longer in her room. After checking all over the house, they confirm that she's truly missing. Fearing that Marta might have wandered off alone, Deolinda suggests Ilda inform her father. But Ilda, suspecting that the French refugees have taken her mother, rushes to the annex in a panic. There, she finds Marta lying motionless on the grass and screams in alarm. Hearing her, Boris and Laura rush from their rooms, concerned. At that moment, Jasmine appears and admits that Vargas had been protecting the refugees the whole time. He then thanks Ilda, revealing she had called him earlier out of fear that her father might escape with Laura. Before Jasmine can apprehend the refugees, Deolinda intervenes and orders the siblings to shut the door and lock it. The officer then demands the key from the maid, but when she insists she doesn't have it, he slaps her. In a sudden act of defense, Ilda strikes him repeatedly with a gardening tool, killing him. The crying girl then sternly tells Deolinda to leave and take the refugees with her. The maid agrees, and Ilda holds her mother's hand as they part ways, mourning her loss. When Vargas returns, he is shocked to find Marta missing from her room. After searching the house, he finally discovers his subordinate lying dead in the annex. Soon after, he finds Ilda beside the lifeless Marta. She looks at her father and confesses to killing Jasmine and sending Deolinda and the refugees away, emphasizing that now they are alone with everyone else gone. The film presents a haunting, emotionally charged exploration of power, innocence, moral ambiguity, and the lingering shadows of authoritarianism. At its center is Ilda, a teenage girl navigating the morally murky world of adults during a time of political oppression and personal betrayal. As her father, Inspector Vargas, tries to maintain control over both his professional and personal life, Ilda begins to uncover the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of their home. A microcosm for a society ruled by secrecy, corruption, and manipulation. Ilda's journey is emblematic of a coming-of-age story, but one that is deeply entangled with trauma and disillusionment. Her fixation on her father is not merely psychological. It is symptomatic of a deeper emotional void, a longing for connection and control in a world where she feels increasingly powerless. Her growing awareness of her father's double life, his involvement with Laura, the French refugee, and his plans to abandon the family, breaks the fragile idolization she once held for him. The film subtly critiques systems of authority, whether paternal, political, or institutional. Vargas represents a man torn between duty, fear, and personal desires, ultimately rendered powerless by the very system he once enforced. His subordinate, Jasmine, embodies the ruthless opportunism found in bureaucratic regimes, a man willing to exploit others for personal gain, unconcerned with the lives that may be destroyed in the process. Deolinda, the housekeeper, symbolizes the ordinary citizen, caught between loyalty, fear, and survival. Her interactions with Ilda reveal a complex emotional landscape. Both protective and complicit, she becomes a reluctant guardian, often powerless to stop the unfolding tragedy. Laura and Boris, the French siblings, bring to the surface the film's geopolitical undertones. They are refugees, symbols of suffering and resistance, who carry the trauma of war, exile, and repression. Their presence in the story exposes the hypocrisy and moral compromise of those in power who claim to uphold justice while operating in secret. The climax, when Ilda kills Jasmine in a desperate act of protection, marks a dramatic turning point. It's not just a moment of violence, but a symbol of resistance, a reclaiming of agency in a world where she had none. However, this act leaves her emotionally shattered, realizing too late the cost of her actions and the isolation they have brought. In the end, Ilda stands alone with her father, both surrounded by the wreckage of their choices. She is no longer a child, but neither fully an adult, caught in a painful limbo between love and betrayal, innocence and guilt. Her final confession, that everyone else has gone and they are now stuck together, is not a reconciliation but a statement of defeat, tinged with sorrow and resentment. The film is a profound meditation on loss, control, and the fragility of human connection. It invites viewers to question the boundaries between right and wrong, victim and oppressor, loyalty and self-preservation. Through Ilda's eyes, we witness the unraveling of a family, and by extension, a society, trapped in its own secrets, afraid of the truth, and haunted by the past.